What's dangerous is when the universe pick you and you put on the magic glasses. There's rules that go with them. You can never take them off. You never see things as they're supposed to be. You see things as they are. You can never force nobody else to win. That go with them. You can never take them off. You never see things as they're supposed to be. You see things as they are. You can never force nobody else to win.
Things I think while I lie awake and contemplate tonight are wearing me out. Well, maybe tomorrow the world will wake and get it right, but I have my doubts, yeah. During the day, well, I design machines of war that scream through the sky. 'Cause I, for one, I like to go to bed free at night under these stars and stripes. And I have my doubt that we're coming down. Yes, I have my doubts, and I have my doubts that we'll make it back out. Yes, I have my doubts, but they'll wind you up and pull the cord until you're spun right out. And I don't understand. Roll the dice and raise the price to feed the machine's mouth. Call it the progress of man. And I have my doubt that we're coming out. Yes, I have my doubt. And I have my doubt that we'll make it back out. I have my doubts, so I'll drink my stuff and raise some hell and shoot my guns to the end of my time. You can have the booze and go to hell and take the guns, but I know they won't be mine. Messed up and out of touch, let's text someone who's in the other room. So don't wonder why we don't say hi or know anyone. I might as well move to the moon. So maybe I'm wrong. Well, I hope that I'm wrong. So maybe I'm wrong. Well, I hope that I'm wrong. Well, the things I think while I lie awake and contemplate at night are wearing me out.
Evening. Hope you're all doing well. It's going to be a short night tonight. I'm going to cover the article that I titled the show after and do headlines, and then I'm booking. It's been a long day for multiple reasons, but I talked last night about a friend of mine here in town, and his dog was attacked by another dog, an unleashed, unsupervised dog, and sustained injuries. And when I saw the initial photos of the injuries, while it was nasty looking, I didn't think it was as serious as it was until it became clear yesterday when he gave me pictures of her being stitched up and having all the drainage tubes and all of that. That's when I knew it was serious. Hope passed away this morning. And that's been his companion for 7 years. And that's bad enough. Just that alone is bad enough. But somehow, employees of the city, if you will, are trying to make it like it's his fault. I'm not a happy camper. And I learned a few things over the years. For one, I learned that I'm a born rebel. There's not much that's going to change that. So I had to learn to try to steer that rebelliousness into a positive, or else I'd have found myself in a whole lot of trouble real quick. Well, I do the same thing when I'm pissed off. I try to steer it in a direction where it's productive instead of destructive. And so, as far as today is concerned, I just basically spent it trying to keep myself away from the situation emotionally. Because I know what this is like. I haven't had this exact thing happen, but believe me, I've had a few different instances here in town to where I've been the complainant, I was the victim, and little to nothing got done. And at the same time, I've watched others that are of the quote-unquote protective class walk with some pretty crazy shit. I mean, I was still in high school when I got my first really good taste of it. And I was pissed then, and I'm still pissed today about it. There was an individual that was under the influence of alcohol, and I'm not a big fan of alcohol to begin with, and drinking and driving I'm really not a big fan of. And this person was heading back to the party that he left from. I think he went on an alcohol run, as a matter of fact, I think. And there was 2 people leaving the party. Well, he was driving a big jacked up 4-wheel drive truck, and before it was all said and done, The truck ran over the top of the car. The driver, the young lady in the car, did not make it. And the other boy in the car has dealt with a lifetime of whatever you want to, I don't know what to call it. I say the word lifetime, and at the same time, what kind of life is it? And the really frustrating thing that puts the cherry on top of that situation, and I'm talking about without even getting into the lack of anything being done, was if you knew this kid, this young man. Now, I didn't know the young girl, but I did know the young man. I had a couple of classes with him. And if I had to put a term on it, a name to it, I would have to use the name or the term class clown. Because that absolutely described him to a T. He was great. It was a pleasure being in class with him. And if I recall correctly, I was actually on a project with him in one of the shop classes I was in. Guy was incredible. Hilarious. When I say class clown, I mean that with absolute respect. And because of who the person was and or who they were related to, I don't think justice was served. Not even close. That frustrates me to this day. And I've had my own dealings. I've had my own dealings to, oh, well, there's no way for us to know, and la-di-da-da-da. At the same time, I had them come to my home because you could see the trash cans from the street. Because the neighbor could smell our barbecue. I don't know what the hell his issue was with the way I cut my grass, but they showed up for that too. Had an ultralight airplane. I was working on finishing up the restoration on it in the front yard. And it sounds like a lawnmower when it's running. It's literally a two-cylinder, roughly 30 horsepower engine. Two-cycle. Had a muffler. And I'm out there trying to get it started. Because again, I'm working on it. I'm getting it ready to hopefully fly it. And I'm out there and I am cranking my ass off. And I couldn't get it started. Lo and behold, here comes a Barney Fife. Noise complaint. Noise complaint. Now, I couldn't get it running, but it was too loud. I had a year and a half, and I've talked about it before on the show, a year and a half of harassment. All because I reported a drunken hit and run. But it happened to be one of the protected class. So I know how things work around here. And while I love this community, this is part of what I'm fighting to change. This has got to stop. I mean, it's almost like they want to go full force against the victim. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I'm so tired of bullshit in every single way. So anyway, that's why I'm not in the most cheery of moods this evening. And so I'm going to cover the story that I titled the show after, and then do some headlines and put an end to the day. I am very glad to see the community coming out and sending him their condolences, recognizing what happened. There was an article posted that went into pretty deep detail about the whole situation. Hadn't been posted yet in our group. If I'm surprised actually that it hadn't been. She's absolutely welcome to post it, and it goes into great detail of the situation, and it's insane. The more you see, the more you find out, the more you're just like, what the hell is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Same old, same old. It's time that comes to a stop. People shouldn't be victimized after already being a victim. It shouldn't. But it's got to be done the right way. It's got to be done with the ballot box. It's got to be done, I don't want to use the term democratically, but politically. It's got to be done right. Anyway, I got I thought it was a pretty crazy story. I was actually looking for another story that had came across on my phone, and it was about the United Nations, and I guess they've at least started the process of passing a resolution. I don't know if it's all said and done now, but involving AI and kind of trying to put a little bit of a lid on AI and making sure that it doesn't get out of control. I don't know that a UN resolution is going to really help that, but I'm not going to sit here and knock them for doing it. Something is going to need to be done, without a doubt. But anyway, this other story, and I've touched upon some aspects of a similar thing fairly recently, because, one of the things that they will do is, and I've said this about Bitcoin, is that if they want people to go along with some type of nonsense, what they will do is they will find a way to make people feel not only safe and secure with it, but almost make it seem like it was partially their idea, or partially a way that they're going to stick it to the system, right? And I've called out Bitcoin and crypto for being that, and I still firmly believe that that's indeed what it is. But then we started to have a tiny house movement that started to pop up. And I'm not against it at all. I mean, I'm all for you doing. I mean, we don't have much bigger than what you would call a tiny house here. Around 400 square feet. It's not very big. But there seemed to be not just a push with it, but the media really seemed to kind of be, awful happy to talk about the story, we'll say. And every time I thought about the whole tiny house emergence, all I could think about is how members of the WEF and their talks about the pods and stuff. And lo and behold, as you see in front of you, Micro apartments are back after nearly a century as need for affordable housing soars. Micro apartments. And now I haven't really read the article because if you're new, you may not know this. I try to hold off, and most articles I do hold off because I don't do this show scripted. I don't like to do scripted stuff. And I like to have whatever it is hit me, the impact of it hit me when I cover it, because I like to be an authentic, a genuine person. And so I haven't read this article. All I did was get some pictures to put together for the thumbnail. But I have a feeling that they're going to be in an awful lot of positive support of this. What I do find interesting, I must say, is that this, I'm assuming that this image here is in Oregon. It says here Portland, Oregon. And dude's got a paper target. But in all fairness, it says CanCon, so we might be talking about airsoft or something. So anyway, see what this has to say. It says every part of Barbara Peraza Garcia and her family's single-room apartment in Seattle has a double or even triple purpose. The 180-square-foot room is filled with an air mattress where she, her partner, and their children aged 2 and 4 sleep. It's also where they play or watch TV. At meal times, it becomes their dining room. Again, our place is around two times, maybe a little more than 2 times bigger than that. I'm not sure the exact square footage of this place. It's not big. It's a tight squeeze for the family of asylum seekers from Venezuela, but a $900 a month, more than a $550 less than average studio in Seattle. The micro apartment with bare bones bathroom and shared kitchen was just within their budget and gave them a quick exit from their previous arrangement, sleeping on the floor of a church. It's warm, we can cook ourselves, we have a private bathroom, it's quiet, said Peraza Garcia, whose family came to the U.S. to escape crime in Venezuela, and so she could access vital medication to combat cysts on her kidney. We can be here as a family now. And I know about all the stuff with the immigrants and stuff like that. This is a family and a woman that needs some medical help. I don't got a problem with that. That I don't have a problem with. Goes on to say, boarding houses that rented single rooms to low-income, blue-collar, or temporary workers were prevalent across the U.S. in the early 1900s. Known as single-room occupancy units, or SROs, they started to disappear in the post-war years amid urban renewal efforts and a focus on suburban single-family housing. Now, the reason I want to point that out is because they are getting people clearly mentally geared mentally geared towards a depression mindset. And that's what I see here. Goes on to say, now the concept is reappearing with the trendy name of micro apartment and aimed at a much broader array of residents as cities buffeted by surging homelessness struggle to make housing more affordable. If you're a single person and you want a low-cost place to live, that's as cheap as you're going to get without trying to find a subsidized apartment, said Dan Bertolet, Senior Director of Housing and Urbanism for the nonprofit research center Sightline Institute. The Pacific Northwest is a leader in the resurgence of this form of affordable housing. Oregon last year passed a bill opening the door for micro apartments, and Washington state lawmakers this year did the same. starting to clear red tape that for years had limited construction of the tiny units, which are about a third of the size of an average studio apartment. Studio apartment. Not talking about 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. They're talking studio apartment, a third of the size of that. And don't get me wrong, I know some studio apartments can be huge, but most are not. The Washington bill, which was signed this week by Democratic Governor Jay Inslee after receiving nearly unanimous support in the legislature, would require most cities to allow micro-apartments in residential buildings with at least 6 units, according to the Department of Commerce. It takes effect in late 2025. The legislation is an effort to counteract skyrocketing housing prices and, in the Seattle area, one of the nation's highest rates of homelessness, as well as a critical housing shortage. Extremely low-income renters, those below federal poverty guidelines or earning 30% of the area median income, face a shortage of 7.3 million affordable rental homes, according to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition report published last week. Such households account for 11 million, or nearly 1/4 of renters nationwide, the report said. Representative Mia Gregerson, who sponsored Washington's bill, said she predicts the measure will lead to thousands of units being built in her state, providing unsubsidized affordable housing to everyone from young people getting their first apartment and elderly people downsizing to those coming out of physical or mental health treatment. And again, look, I absolutely think the people should have the right, if they want a little home like that, I don't see no problem with it. But understand that this is being done for the same thing that I've warned people about for actually like 3 decades at this point. I know what George Bush meant when he said we had to better compete with the global economy. Even a person at the young age I was at the time, I realized what he was really saying. Because the truth of the matter is, the only way that we can better compete in the global economy when you've got, slave labor going on in so many other nations, is to lower our standards of living. Now, we've been lowering it quite a bit over the years, but now it seems like it's getting ready to go off a cliff. The frustrating thing to me when older people will talk about how they did this and how they did that, they don't realize that times aren't the same. Generation or so before my dad and up to and including my dad, although he never made it this far, you could actually build yourself a nest egg and retire. There are ways to do that. My dad had retirement funds and stuff. There were ways to do that. Now they're hidden. Now you get the retirement of working at Walmart and McDonald's, both jobs, so that you can afford your medications and a place to live, and that's not the same. That is not the same. And they're slowly moving us more and more in this direction. The whole social economic income barriers are getting spread so far apart. The middle class is just about completely gone. The other thing that frustrates me about the older people when they get on their kick of how they did this and how they did that. Yeah, the same some bitches talking that song and dance are the same some bitches that after they got up in the loft, they started pulling the ladder up behind them so nobody could follow. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox. Let me get back to the article here. Government can't close that gap all by itself. It has to have for-profit, market-rate housing built all at the same time, said Garrison, a Democrat. The U.S. lost hundreds of thousands of SROs in the last half of the 20th century as associations with poverty and substandard accommodation sparked restrictive zoning laws. Some cities outlawed their construction altogether, a loss some housing experts say helped contribute to the homelessness crisis. Facing that crisis and a critical housing shortage, cities and states across the nation are now shifting their stance. In December, as her state grappled with a massive influx of migrants, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced a $50 million program aimed at repairing and renovating 500 SROs across the state. New York City lost at least 70,000 such units between the early 20th century and 2014, according to a report from New York's University Furman Center. But there's a concern that this type of affordable housing is not an ideal fit for an especially vulnerable group, families. There are more than 3,800 unhoused families with children in the Seattle area, among the highest in the nation, according to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development 2023 one-night count. Cities need to focus on building affordable housing that also includes larger units such as studios and one-bedroom apartments, said Marisa Zapata, a land use planning professor at Portland State University. Now, let me just throw this out there. You can lose your child if you don't have what they consider proper accommodations. If you had like a more or less like a studio one room apartment, where you might have a little kitchenette, little bathroom, but no bedroom per se. And let's say you're a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case may be. And let's say you have a daughter and a son. And every place that I know of in the United States, Child Services would be saying, oh no, absolutely not. And you could lose your children. That's just a little tidbit that I wanted to throw in there. I was born at night, but not last night. My biggest concern is that we will see them as the solution and not do right by our community members by building the housing that people want, she said of micro apartments. The bill passed by Oregon lawmakers last year requires local governments to allow single-room occupancy units in areas zoned for residential use. The provision took effect January 1st. Central City Concerned, a Portland-based homeless services nonprofit, leases more than 1,000 SRO units, both subsidized and not, to people who are considered extremely low income. It helps people struggling to access housing due to things like eviction histories and poor credit scores. Now, mind you, you've got these companies, corporations, that are building these buildings to do that. But how much you want to bet that Joe Blow can't start building little bitty tiny houses on little bitty trailers so that he could help out people in their community, in his community? They're okay, but only as long as certain people are participating in the building of it. It's just nonsense. And so many of these aspects of this stuff go unrecognized. The units have a median rent of $550 a month, making them a vital option for people exiting homelessness or living on fixed incomes, such as those with disabilities, and said Sarah Holland, the Senior Director of Supportive Housing and Employment. Over 80% of tenants were formerly homeless, she said, and some have been living in their units for 30 years. Sorry, I am tired. As costs continue to escalate in Portland, it gives them a chance to stay in their homes, she said. Cheyenne Wellborn moved into one of the nonprofit's micro-apartments in downtown Portland last March after years of living on the streets. The room, which has a curtained-off toilet and sink, is just big enough to fit a single bed, a chair, and a TV. But to him, it's a treasured home that he's decorated with colorful lights, potted plants, and action figures. He uses a small kitchenette which features an induction cooktop for making the tea he loves to drink. All I had was just me and my backpack, and that's it, he said. I was just happy to be in here, and I didn't have to spend another winter out there. I just want a home, you know, a nice home, a decent home. Some experts hope the Pacific Northwest will inspire more states to take similar steps. The alternatives are people being in shelters, people being on the street, people being doubled, tripled, quadrupled up, said Vicky Ben, faculty director at New York University's Furman Center and a law professor. For Peraza Garcia's family in Seattle, the tight squeeze is worth it to be in the same complex as their cousins in walking distance of grocery stores, a park, and preschools, 15-minute city. They plan to spend the next year in the micro apartment and then move to a bigger place if they can get good paying jobs. We're happy because we're in here in a quiet place where we can be together as a family, she said. And that is the article. So just be leery of stuff like this. I think it's a good answer to a growing epidemic in this nation. But I think it's being controlled by far few people that need to be controlling it. And I don't think it's something that should be forced upon the masses, and I think that's exactly what it's intended for. What are you going to do? Live on the streets or move into your pod and be happy? It's ridiculous. Anyway, let me have a couple sips of coffee. Now, I hope like hell it's just 'cause my shoulder was out, but my left arm is hurting like hell. It's aching and tingling at the same time. Ukraine forced to close controversial war sponsors blacklist. Ukraine targets kindergartners with Russian names. It's crazy. Russia strips citizenship over disinformation about army for the first time. NATO nation gives timeline for F-16 deliveries to Ukraine. EU state to send more old Leopard tanks to Ukraine, says media. No French interest in Ukraine, says major opposition figure. Israeli military raids Gaza's largest hospital. Hungary against using Russian funds to arm Ukraine, says DW. Zelensky's security chief insults senior Chinese diplomat. Ukraine offended by U.S. talk of loans, says Politico. Trump's biggest health fear revealed, says Washington Post. Putin officially declared Russia's president-elect. U.S. scraps airborne directed energy weapon program. I did a report on that earlier today. Russian military wipes out saboteurs near Ukraine border. Sanctions war cheerleader among top buyers of Russian fertilizers, says RIA Novosti. China will be ready to seize Taiwan in 3 years, a U.S. admiral claims. Putin addresses nation after election. Russia reports significant drop in imports. EU state warns of an increased terrorism threat. Russian crab king staged his own death, says a prosecutor. Ukraine disappointed with Britain, says Daily Mail. Poles unhappy with government's handling of farmer protests, says Poll. Russian MP warns French soldiers not to enter Ukraine. Russian army announces new Donbass gains. Russia and China reach shipping deal with Houthis, says Bloomberg. Cancer vaccines ready within 3 years, says Russian scientist. Russian money doesn't belong to anyone, says Germany's Scholes. Houthis hit Israel for the first time. Russian woman fined $175 for trying to import Dior slippers, says media. Poverty could trigger revolt in Canada, says secret report. Manned Soyuz launch canceled seconds before liftoff. Israeli offensive in Rafah would lead to massacres, doctors warn the UN. Italian PM wants 100,000 euros over deepfake porn. IAEA rebukes EU over Russian nuclear fuel. Westerners won't have to die for Donbass, says EU's Borrell. Macron believes Ukraine could fall soon, says Politico. EU states leader congratulates Putin on election win. NATO tells Ukraine to keep drafting new troops. I don't know from where, but Biden administration sues Apple. UN tells EU to end the double standards on Ukraine and Gaza. And lastly, migrants break through security barriers at U.S. border. Insanity, insanity, insanity. Anyway, I'm going to leave at that insanity and try to relax. God willing, I'll be back Sunday night. So anyway, I hope you all have a good weekend. I hope to see you Sunday. As always, God bless you. We love you. Be one with your spirit. And shalom.